Welcome, race fans, to another round 5 at Silverstone GP. You can see we're in the Porsche Cup still on Project Cars 2. So I've got my guest commentary booth again. I've got our race director, ORC Yankees fan, and I've got our technical correspondent, ORC Blackos. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Perfect. Thanks for coming on board with us tonight. So we're going to go ahead and go through our replay we just shot earlier. We're going to talk Turkey about this track and about the characteristics, everything about it. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, so first, let's go on board. Actually, let's talk about the action areas of this track. So, ORC Yankees fan, what do you think are the most important parts of this track or the action areas that we need to look out for?
I would say the coming into turn one, and then we have the Wellington Strait coming into Brooklyn. And we also have the Maggots Beckett's Essex section also is an important area of the track as well.
Hey, Ghost, do you see any other action areas that you want to talk about?
Yeah, with the weather conditions, you really have to hit your marks with this track. Smoothness is what it's the key to. Technical parts is important, but if you can be smooth along this, because with the wet conditions, you can pretty much make up some pace. I think that's what the key is. This attracts any mistakes by going to the puddles. You'll definitely lose traction to there. You're gonna have to play a lot of throttle control conditions. So you got to choose your, and at the same time you got to how to overtake somebody in the wet. So I think this is a good challenge.
It actually brings us nicely into the next kind of topic that we want to talk about, which is rain driving versus dry driving. All the things you kind of just mentioned, throttle control, being close to the other drivers with maybe less visibility with a lot of spray, as we see with our onboards right now. So is there any other main differences that a driver needs to look out for? Yankees fan, we'll start with you first.
I would say the key is to find the ideal wet line, because some corners the best situation would be to not hit the apex because of the puddling. You lose the car, as you see that car just did. and
Yeah.
and also like on the straights, there's a lot of puddling. So what I did was I would go half throttle or three-quarters throttle, so the car wouldn't spin or lose control. So that's part of the throttle control that Ghost was saying.
Okay, Ghost, you want to add anything to that one? The rain driving versus dry?
Yeah. To piggyback off of what Yankees fan, when you got more into detail about the throttle control, like I noticed braking as well. You might have to brake a little bit earlier to hit the apex, because in the wet conditions, if you still try to do a dry line brake, your car is going to go wide. You're not going to be able to make the turn, and also early turning too. From what I was noticing, so I think those factors play a key on Silverstone. Silverstone is a great track. I mean, it's a fast-paced track, but again, you're gonna have to change your whole drive line, your whole setup to become fast. If it's kind of funny way of saying that, but I think that's the key.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that definitely. So the other thing that brings us into too is kind of the car setup. So we were talking about this a little bit in our practice and having a soft car setup for this for the rain. But then when it comes to the fog and it starts drying out, you might be a little bit slower. So what is going to be important? Is it going to be up to the drivers obviously to set up? Do they want to set it up for the first part of the race or the second part of the race? And what's going to be more important? I think that each driver is going to have to evaluate that and kind of do some testing and see. So. Yankees fan, what do you think will be important, or your kind of strategy, what you're kind of looking at?
Well, in the wet, usually you would soften up the suspension and the roll bars to get mechanical grip. So that's probably the main key to set up, and also getting your tire pressures correct for the cooler temperatures, along with the track being wet.
Yeah, we did see that in our practice too. Is that the tire temperature is really tough to get right. So I think that's going to definitely going to be difficult to get to. So the other thing we want to talk about is controller versus wheel. So is that going to play heavily into anybody's hands, or is that going to be just a crapshoot on who set up the car the best? What do you think, Ghost?
It's a good question. Definitely the car setup, no matter on the controller or on the wheel. Maybe the controller might have a little bit of advantage in the sense of early turning, maybe instead of with the wheel. If you have a different lock ratio than you do on the controller. So it might be, and I'm kind of leaning towards now as I'm thinking about this, it might be a little more leeway toward a controller user than a wheel.
Yeah, easier to get back and forth on the thumb versus the whole wheel turning, right?
Right.
Yeah, Yankees fan, what do you think too, as well as that controller versus wheel?
Yeah, I would say, well, I started with controller on my side, so with PC2, so when I was running counter assist, that helps tremendously with controlling the car. So if they're running that, then it'll help, and also the level of traction control they're using. But I would say it's if they use those things to their advantage, it would be easier on the controller side than the wheel.
And that makes sense, right? So,
yeah, and you brought up a good point about actually changing your traction control. And what Speedy was saying about your setup. So, traction control might be a very important setting.
Yeah,
and it definitely says that in the game too. If you look at all the menus and stuff, it definitely talks about loose gravel and wet surfaces and having to have more traction control stuff. So I think all of us here pretty much we like to run less traction control and try to manhandle the car a little more. So I think this is going to require a little more assist to make it successful. So that's something we got to think about too. Yeah. So let's go over the last topic here. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to go through a track guide here, but let's go with the drivers to watch. So Yankees fan, in your mind, besides us, obviously yourself and myself and Ghost and everybody here, who do you get your eye on?
I would say Irving, because he was doing well at Bathurst, but he made a couple mistakes, so he lost the restrictor. So now he's, I think, at 41. So he may have an advantage on this round, because most of us in the top of the championship had increased restrictors this round.
Okay. Black Ghost, who you got your eye on?
I have my eye on Blaster. Blaster performance at Bathurst qualifying and stuff was very well, but like Speedy said with Irving, Blaster had a couple mistakes which got him out of contention. So I'm thinking he's going to try to rebound and put a lot of effort into this track.
Yeah, and he did win race 2. So it was race 1 where he had the problems, and Yeah, and found himself lower in the order, but he still did well overall in the round at Bathurst. And to be fair, that is his home track, so that's kind of his passion. I felt like as a homegrown Australian, he felt like he had to do well there, right, to maintain his reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was good. Yeah. So good call. I think we our normal guys, Percy, as well as Customs, I think, are another couple drivers to keep an eye on. They're always fast. We'll see if the rain really slows them down. That's going to be the telltale. We haven't had a rain race with these guys yet. The last one we had was Sugo in our last series for our versus Lamborghini, and we had a couple guys that did really well there. So. That are not in the championship now. So yeah, definitely. I think Irving is a good call. Blaster as well is a good call. But we have some good drivers here. So I think that'll wrap up our chat for today on this. So thank you guys so much for coming on board and talking with everybody. As we look forward to round 5 of the Porsche Cup Challenge and GT3 Endurance Challenge with ORC. So if you guys are looking to race with us, please jump on board our website. It's Online Racing Collect, COLLECT.wixsite.com, and join the conversation in our Discord as well and become part of the community. The rules are that you have to be fast. No, you don't have to be fast. You have to be clean, and you have to be spatially aware, and we're happy to have you. So any final words, guys?
Actually, yeah, just real fast. What was interesting to this practice run we were just going through, I'm 3 clicks down in restrictor, but before that, it might be the too much power I had was struggling with traction control, with traction on the track. Of course, the tires are the most important thing, but then I lowered it to my 3 clicks, so it was actually a little bit better. So maybe the guys that have the restrictors on might do better.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. That's true. We find sometimes they're manageable at certain tracks. So, Yankees fan, anything more to add?
Yeah, I would say this track will be very interesting because of it's starting from rain first, going into dry. With Sugo, we had dry first, going into wet. So when you pit, is going to be very important, and we don't even know if it'll be dry enough to go back to slicks when you pit before the pit window closes. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good point. Yeah, we saw a little bit of a dry in line with a little 15-minute practice session, right? But 45-minute race is a whole nother story.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Thanks again, guys, for joining, and have a good night.
All right. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.